and welcome back to the Baseball Development Hub podcast. My name is Trevor Powers, and I'm joined, as always, by co-host of the podcast, Dan Galati. Dan, early morning here. We've had a long week. We're trying to cram this in before we get busy again for our listeners on this fine Monday. So, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about what we got going on this past week and why we're excited to hop back on here and talk about it?
Yeah, it's like it's the busy time of year, I guess. We got our personal, holiday season. We're
Mm-hmm.
starting. I feel like this week is the start of the holidays. Kind of everyone starts to check out from work and starts to have plans, and we're just as busy as always, trying to fit that stuff in along with what we've been up to. But got to head out to Little Rock on Tuesday night. Spent Wednesday with Newt Force. Obviously, the people who make all of this possible, our wonderful sponsors. It was great to spend time with Will and get some stuff done with them. And then we got to do one of our favorite things, which was head over from Little Rock to Fayetteville and spend all of Thursday with the Arkansas Razorbacks, which now makes me regret my choice in hat, I guess.
Yeah, right. Well, I think in this, well, that's a good point. That's a good point. I was going to say something about Arkansas's football program, but then I realized those are two high-level baseball programs that are competing against each other. But yeah, it was a really awesome, obviously, for those that have been following since day one, or even if you've come along the way of our journey, you'd know this is our second trip to Arkansas facility tour, and obviously our interview with pitching coach Matt Hobbs the first time. This time was really cool because not only did we circle back with Coach Hobbs, and I mean, you could speak more in detail. I was flying the drone and getting some B-roll, but it's not going to be the same conversation. For those that don't have the opportunity to get to listen to Coach Hobbs talk, I swear we could interview him weekly and it'd be informative after listening back to some of the audio. And then got to spend some time with hitting coach and recruiting coordinator Nate Thompson. And then obviously Hunter Bell, their director of strength and conditioning. So being able to get back to Fayetteville and be able to pick those guys' brains, spend some time with them, feeling like we're a little bit more comfortable this time to ask a little bit deeper questions when we go into these things, and just walked away. I mean, the rankings, where these teams end up at the end of the year, the Omaha appearances, the success every year. Obviously, that is obvious, right? Anybody could say that, oh, that's a good program. Yeah, but like seeing the details of the behind the scenes, at least a little bit, right? What goes through these guys' brains, how they utilize that into player development is really fascinating, really cool. I don't want to say they're one of one because there's a lot of programs out there that probably share some of the same beliefs and the same tech and how to utilize it. But I will give them credit for one thing that really stood out: the individualized development down through every player on the roster. And I know every coach says that, but it seems like there is a genuine belief that like our goal is to maximize each and every player on this roster and whatever it takes to do that. And I think they really do put the player first each and every day. And I think that's a really big thing that stood out. And again, that wasn't on air conversations. It was just the way they talk about their process of developing players that stood out to me, that it's like, this is a meticulous, detailed, very, kind of not necessarily all about like what it looks like on Friday night, right? Like we want to make sure we're maximizing each and every step of these guys through their process. And even if it goes beyond college baseball into professional baseball, we're okay with them not peaking under our program. We want them to be the best they can be in the MLB, right?
Yeah, did you get the feeling too, like I don't know if it was just maybe this day, but to me the communication from like top down within their program, and maybe because they were just explaining it to us more than some of these other schools have, but I don't know. How did you feel about that? Because to me, I was like, I just was so impressed by how it felt like every single person that is involved within that program, like, is on the exact same page, and the communication is just so well done. And you're like, oh, that makes sense. This is probably why they're so successful and why they can develop guys and why they can, we always laugh about like they'll have guys that throw 98 just stashed, not even
Hmm.
pitching because they don't feel they're
Yeah.
ready and they can afford that. And it just feels like when you kind of get behind the scenes, the way that clearly they communicate from Coach Van Horn down to like every single person in the program. I don't know. That was kind of my biggest, I feel like, takeaway the other day
Yeah.
was like, dang.
Yeah. And I think that that kind of ties into, and I think this is something that stood out the first time we were there is like the alignment between what Coach Hobbs needs and what Coach Bell executes, right? The alignment from I'm gonna assume that's also in Coach Van Horn and Hobbs. Like if Coach Van Horn sees a guy and he has wicked stuff and he wants to go to him, but Hobbs says he's not ready, there's not a tug and pull there, right? Like it's the trust that they have in each and every part of that staff. And so like that's kind of really and again, it's early in the morning, so maybe I didn't put it in the most eloquent way, but like that's the reason why I think they're truly developing these guys on the right trajectory. They don't rush guys. They put guys in a position to stay healthy, to ensure they're healthy. They manage their workload. All of those things that are I'm not gonna say voodoo, but like it's very easy come June to deviate from that plan, right? When national championships are on the line and the expectations are at a high level. And so yes, 100%. I think the alignment for a staff that, I mean, Hunter Bell's been there for 4 years, and I think out of the people that we've interacted with, that he's the newest. You have what Coach Hobbs has had between DJ and Zach for multiple years. Coach Thompson has had Coach Werner's for a couple of years at the very least. Um, and we didn't get to interact with those two and see them in action. But that creates alignment, trust. Hey, I have, scar tissue on the fact that I've heard you say X, Y, and Z isn't ready. And then maybe we pushed him too fast and it didn't work. Or maybe we've had a guy that hasn't been, ready to handle the workload that's required of a SEC starter or reliever, because Coach Bell was translating that message and we still rolled him out there and we had an injury or anything like that. And it seems like they've built that up of like 6 years of equity with each other. And yes, 100% that like the alignment is so obvious because you don't bounce from even two different completely different sides of player development on offense and defense, and the message is the same, just in offense. One's kind of giving you the offensive perspective, and one's giving you the pitching perspective.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. Like the staff continuity was it's impressive because you would think of a program like that and you think that they're going to have a lot of staff turnover, just because, jobs are going to come open and guys like, Coach Hobbs and Coach Thompson, their names are going to be floated in rumors for jobs because they're obviously very good at what they do at an assistant coach level. And they don't go anywhere. They stay right there and they continue to work together. And you could see with how all of them interact with each other. Um, they they love Arkansas. They love that program. They love showing up every day. And I thought it was interesting too, talking to them about the types of kids they get there, um, and like how self motivated you have to be to play at that program, and their understanding of the fact that like yes, I am the pitching coach or I am the hitting coach or the strength coach at the University of Arkansas. That's a big job, and I have a lot of pressure and responsibility, but like it's not my job to kind of, I don't want to say handhold, but it's not my job to kind of work over these guys and just kind of talk down to our players, and it has to look this way and it has to be this way, and that's what's so impressive. It's like, well, what does this individual player need? We brought him here for a reason. What does he need? I'm going to make sure he gets exactly what he needs. And, they're constantly, I feel like, changing year in and year out, and talking a little bit to Coach Thompson about that, like just understanding like how much their offense has changed year over year. And then when you think about it, when you hear him talk about it and then you think about it and go back and look at some of their offenses, he's obviously done a really good job of developing power hitters and developing some power from guys, which is kind of the trend in college baseball, right? Like a lot of homers lately, but their offenses do change kind of year over year depending on who's in that lineup and who's playing on a consistent basis. And that's impressive that, that offense doesn't look the exact same every year. They're going to maybe do some more things. And I think that, they want to continue to develop and just kind of the want to build just like an absolutely dynamic offense that's hard to beat because they can get you in so many different ways. And they obviously do a really good job of going and getting the guys who are able to do that and fit into kind of that philosophy of like we want to be tough to deal with because we can do everything at a pretty high level. And if we need, on a given day, if we need to be able to run the bases to beat you, put the ball in play, we can do it. If we need to be able to leave the yard, we can. If you go back and look at some of their big series wins, even in the regular season over the last couple of years, like you'll see that they get it done in different ways.
Mm-hmm. I want to I want to use that for a segue at some point, but I don't think I'm ready to turn the page on that. So I want to respond to that, but we're going to respond to that in a couple of minutes because I want to ask you one question real quick before just we close the book on this trip to Arkansas. Because it's a really awesome point. And I think what Coach Thompson was saying is what we're going to talk about in large detail today. Shocker, offensive development and building offenses as a team is different than what you see on Twitter. And that's what we're going to discuss today. But I want to ask you specifically about Coach Hobbs and even a little bit about Coach Bell. What we interacted with them a year ago, roughly a year, 13 months ago. What stood out to you this year in comparison to last? That maybe you learned, that maybe they changed not a tone on, but that's like went deeper in detail because obviously they're the best, both of them. And being able to pick their brain on a yearly basis, it feels like is something that's they're always going to adapt and change. And I think that's a really cool perspective to kind of shine the light on.
Yeah, full transparency. When we were there last year, that was like our first really big program that we had been to. And so I was so hyper
You're forgetting
focused.
College World Series participant Arizona.
You're right. You're right. I don't, sorry. I don't mean to do that to Arizona. And I wish you hadn't even thrown that in there because the people wouldn't realize what order those trips were in. It felt different when we went to Arkansas just because when we went out to Arizona, the comfort level with like John and some of those guys and the time of year we were there, it just felt a little different in what we were doing. And when we rolled up to Arkansas, it just felt a little different. I was very hyper focused on things going smoothly and, not making sure that everything we did that day went well. So this time going in there, now that we've had a bunch of reps and we've been to a bunch of places and also the comfort of having met these people before, so we weren't strangers walking into the facility, and obviously the response was they made that us feel that welcome the other day, which was I appreciate and was awesome. So it was kind of I was definitely in a different mindset. But I mean, when you talk to Coach Hobbs, I said this to you yesterday. What's so impressive to me about him is everything seems to be the most important thing when it comes to pitching development. And like that seems so simplistic and so obvious. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who kind of go out of their way to, they want to be that way as well. They go about their work and everything is important, but it is so hard to actually operate that way, to understand if all of these things matter, if everything we do matters, figuring out what's most important that day to work on, figuring out, okay, if this matters and this matters, but we can only focus on one of these things this day, to be able to kind of sift through that and understand this is what we have to attack today. And then, which was a big takeaway last year, but again, this year, just talking to him is like how simple he can make it seem. When if you know anything about pitching and you hear him talk, he's talking about complex ideas and things that aren't easy to do. Like it's so much easier said than done with all these things. And I think he even said that a couple of times during our conversation the other day. He was like, obviously easier said than done. But he seems to make it so simple. And, you kind of understand why guys can get so good working under him because he makes it so digestible. And I feel like he does such a good job of making what you need to get accomplished in that day done, because he's like, this is it. This is what we need to do. This is what you particularly need to focus on. This is what this guy needs to focus on. And his understanding of like not trying to put people into a box, because he's had so much experience, and I think because he's worked with so many different guys and that do different things well, he understands that there isn't like even, everybody says they don't want to be cookie cutter, and I'm not saying turning, and that to me in my mind means turning everyone into the same thing. Like, he'll even see guys who have similar traits or characteristics to guys he's worked with in the past, and he won't put them in the same box as those guys. He will figure out truly what works best for that person, and that goes back to their staff communication and continuity, and ties into Hunter Bell, where like they figure out truly what that guy needs as a staff completely for that individual to make them the best pitcher that they possibly could be. And like, as you mentioned earlier, not just for the University of Arkansas, but then as they go into, the professional side, which they get a lot of those guys into professional baseball.